Yuan versus dollars.
Ready, fight!
For the last 80 years, the US dollar has been the most powerful currency in the world because it is known as what's called a reserve currency. This refers to a currency that's accepted throughout the entire world. It is widely recognized and there is enough in international circulation for it to be useful for trade. It also has a fair value. And since 1945, the US dollar has taken that place because of its safety, resiliency, and stability. How? Well, there are a few reasons. First, the US has one of the largest and most stable economies in the world. That means the dollar is an attractive currency for investors and traders who want to put their money somewhere safe. Plus, the US is a major player in international trade, so a lot of deals are dominated in dollars. For instance, one significant factor contributing to the US dollar's global dominance is the petrodollar system. That is because almost all international oil sale done using American dollars. Way back in 1974, the Saudi Arabia agreed to sell its crude oil in US dollars and invest its oil revenue in US Treasury securities in return for US government protection. Thus, the size of the US financial markets throughout the world has contributed to the US dollar's dominance in global trade. But there were some challenges. According to research of Samir and Gupta in New York University, China has effect on US dollar performance in global currency markets. The US dollar is apparently at risk of losing that reserve currency status, as the world's second largest economy, which is China, is slowly cutting off ties with the United States. How and why is this happening? China's currency, the yuan, has received a lot of attention over the past decade as China's economic growth miracle has continued, and it has become the world's largest exporter. There has been intense debate about the value of yuan, and it is no secret that the Chinese government, through its central bank, closely manages the value of its exchange rate. We often hear that China's currency management helps China promote cheap exports to the US and steal American manufacturing jobs. In a floating currency regime, trade surpluses typically lead to an increase in the value of the domestic currency, which is the yuan. This is because as the world demands more of Chinese goods, it drives up the demand for yuan as well. Moreover, it was announced that China and Brazil struck a deal to trade in their own currencies, ditching the US dollar as intermediary. This would essentially enable them to trade directly with each other, without having to buy US dollars in the process, and they currently transact just around $150 billion every single year. That's no longer going through the US. China's been slowly shifting away from the US dollars. Since 2010, Russia and India both ditched the US dollar a year ago, and Saudi Arabia recently said that it was open to the idea of trading the Chinese yuan. Not to mention, China, Russia, Brazil, India, and South Africa have already joined forces to transact in their own reserve currency that's separate from our dollars, referred to as BRICS. Even Elon Musk tweeting that this is a serious issue. US policy has been too heavy-handed, making countries want to ditch the dollar. Even Saudi Arabia entered a new trade agreement, and ultimately that's going to put a lot more pressure on the United States. Another example of how China surpasses US dollars happens in Moscow, Russia, as the most traded foreign currency, according to data, on a total of 64,900 to earned ruble transactions were completed, with the volume trading reaching over 1 billion, whereas the US dollar ruble repair recorded only 29,500 transactions, and the spot rating totaled over $1 billion. Somehow, it is true that China is the world's largest trading nation, importing and exporting more than the United States and the European Union. However, despite its economic growth, China's currency is not the world's reserve, and that is something that will limit its economic potential and perhaps more importantly, its influence. The American dollar has been doing very well recently, according to some experts, and a lot of that is due to the world being in an uncertain economic situation, like during pandemic. Fears around inflation and recession are also causing individuals and institutions with lots of money to look for safe places to keep their wealth until this whole thing blows over. And where safer to keep it than in the world's default medium of exchange, which is currently the US dollar. China would love for their currency to be treated the same way in the global economy, and they are doing their best to try and get it there. Yes, the greatest tool that China has to push its currency onto the world stage is simply trading. China also artificially lowers the value of its currency in foreign exchange markets to make its exports more competitive. This is a tactic that has helped to build the impressive industrial base it has today. But it also means that its currency does not have a true fair value, which is one of the most important factors that we are looking for to consider when picking a currency to keep in reserve, just like the US dollars. Now, the question is, who won? Is it the yuan or US dollars? Well, according to Peter Earle, an economist, the dollarization has begun as recent trade deals elevate other currencies. Yes, it is true. But the dollar is likely to remain a top global currency, and the odds that China's yuan will replace a dollar are essentially impossible, he added. All in all, let's say the Chinese yuan haven't replaced the dollar as a reserve currency for some reason. However, this doesn't mean it can't. Remember, throughout history, there's a constantly changing world order between the leading economy and the rising economy, and over time, one will fail to make for something new. This is Melmar, and you are watching the latest news.